Karen DiCostanzo with Canine Consent. I am joined today by my spokesmodel, Riley. Riley is going to be helping us to work on leash walking. Leash walking is a very common issue that people come and ask for help with. And one of the things that we can do to help set up the dog for success is first to put them in a good no-pull harness if your dog has a habit of pulling or lunging. Riley here is wearing a Freedom no-pull harness. And we're going to also make sure that your dog has a foundation of learning to look to you as a default behavior. I like to reinforce dogs for choosing to look at me of their own volition, because if I don't have a dog's attention, it's really hard to teach them to do anything. So I'm a big believer in teaching dogs to check in with me in the knowledge that they're going to make nice things happen for themselves. We're using food today, but you could use a variety of non-food reinforcers as well. You could use, for example, walking a little bit faster as a reinforcer. You could use access to go sniff something that your dog clearly is interested in. So you have a variety of ways that you can reinforce your dog. But we're going to be working on leash walking, which means that first I am reinforcing him for the offered attention. The next thing is I want to teach him how to move into the position next to me. And for this, I typically start either with the dog off leash altogether or on a drag line. So I'm going to drop the leash out of my hands. And what I want to do is to teach Riley how to get himself into position next to me, facing the way that I'm facing. So I'm going to start out by having a little piece of food in my hand. I'm going to put that on his nose. I'm going to step back and then step forward. And as he moves into position, I'm going to click and treat him. As he remains in position, I'm going to continue to treat him so he learns the power of choosing to be right here. You'll notice that I clicked a little bit early, so he was getting clicked as he was moving into position, not when he was already up here. The reason I'm doing that is so that he is learning to get reinforcers very timely. And if I am reinforcing the dog once I realize, oh, they're next to me, typically by the time I've gotten my click and my treat, the dog's up here again somewhere. So I want to reinforce back in the 5 o'clock position, where this is noon, and I want to teach that dog to move into that position on cue. So right now I'm using a food lure. It will eventually be faded, and then I will start to use a cue instead of a lure. So when I finish this behavior, I want to be able to cue the dog to move into position either by giving a verbal cue, like with me. Some people like to say heel. I also will reinforce the dog for coming into that position all on their own. And then lastly, I want to be able to teach the dog to do that on a nonverbal cue, because for dogs, nonverbal, that body language is their primary language. So even if we're using an English word that they know really well, there's still going to be a short lag time for processing where they have to think about that second language to translate that. So I want to be able to cue my dog to move into position, and I do that just by doing this. So we're going to start out with Riley out of position, out in front of me. Then I'm going to have him move back into position with me. So I'm stepping back, and then I'm going to turn and step forward. And when he's in the 5 o'clock position, I'm going to mark at that point and then get my treat out. And you'll see he's already figured this out, so he's standing back here. So I'm teaching him, this is where you can expect to collect your paycheck, so you might want to just put yourself there. So that's going to be the next step in your loose leash walking. The final step is going to be starting to move forward. So I begin by just taking one step. And as he starts to move with me, I'm going to click and treat him. At this point, I may choose to pick up the leash. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I'm just going to, again, take one step. So if I step forward, he moves with me. I click him for making the choice to come with me. And at that point, I'm again reinforcing it back here at 5 o'clock. So those are the basics to get started on loose leash walking. And I would encourage you to do this as we're doing right now inside where there's less distraction, gradually increasing the amount of distraction. Maybe you turn the TV on while you're training. Maybe you have your kids come in the same room and play. You can also take your dog out just outside the home and work maybe in your backyard or just in the front yard, as long as it's not overly distracting. And you're eventually working up to being able to do it anywhere. So starting with low distraction, gradually adding more distraction, until they've generalized that skill to be able to do it anywhere, anytime.